Hey gang, so as most of you know, I try to use evidence to determine what is true or not. Well, we have it, undeniable proof that I have psychic powers. A few weeks ago, in response to the most recent mass shootings in Florida, among other things, I said that one of the ineffectual responses from public figures would be this: blaming media like video games, music, and movies, the same media the rest of the world devours. Well, I must be clairvoyant, because Donald Trump, who is President of America, said this.
We have to do something about maybe what they're seeing and how they're seeing it, and also video games. I'm hearing more and more people say the level of violence on video games is really shaping young people's thoughts. And then you go the further step, and that's the movies. You see these movies, they're so violent.
Yep, called it. Definitive proof that I'm able to see the future. Well, that, or this is the same argument made time and time again. When there's a tragedy like this, especially one where young people are perpetrators, politicians and others will go out of their way to blame the media, especially violent video games and movies. But here's the thing. The rest of the world is getting pretty much the same media. Hell, foreign markets are making a more and more significant contribution to box office totals these days. That's why big budget blockbusters are so, I don't want to say terrible, but bland. They are so dependent upon reaching a much wider audience with such varying social and cultural views that, to be competitive, means they are much less likely to take risks or rely on plots that may not play well with a myriad of cultures out there. But giant robots fighting each other? Everybody understands that. So if the rest of the developed world is consuming the same media as President Trump is complaining about, why does firearm violence seem to be a uniquely American issue compared to the rest of the economically advanced countries? What could be different? Up here in the frozen north, our cultural consumption is almost the same as Americans. We watch the same shows and movies, marketed exactly the same way. The percentage of gamers is almost the same. Yet violent acts, especially firearm violence, are significantly lower. That leads me to think that it's either due to much more lenient restrictions on firearm ownership down south, or that Americans have much more trouble discerning the difference between fiction and reality than the rest of the world, and desire to emulate what is seen in popular culture. You know, it isn't that surprising that Trump would believe that, considering the infatuation he got with switchblades apparently after watching West Side Story. I guess that means we need to start censoring Broadway musicals, or we'll see an increase in obsessive stalkers because they watched Phantom. Unjustly targeted men will run from the law only if they see Les Mis. Or, horror upon horrors, cross-dressers will think they should have access to comfortable footwear upon seeing kinky boots. Seriously, researchers have shown that violent media, like video games, does not cause its users to become more violent. Oddly enough, none of those who have studied the hypothesized link between video game violence and violent activity were invited to Trump's recent meeting on video game violence. In regards to video games causing violence, the opposite in fact has been shown to be true, that exposure to violent movies and games has in some cases led to a reduction of violence. Yes, people with violent tendencies can be drawn to violent media, but it isn't the media that makes them violent and doesn't translate to an increase in violence in the real world, and, in some cases, can be an outlet for their violent tendencies.
A kid is able to see the movie if sex isn't involved, but killing is involved, and maybe they have to put a rating system for that.
I hate to break this to you, Donald, but there already are rating systems out there, both for movies and games. Most countries, including yours, already have them. And yes, violence is one of the things they do consider when working out censorship. In fact, up here our movie rating system is seen as much more relaxed than in the States, and yet has not resulted in an increase in violence across the country. National stereotypes notwithstanding.
She hung out at different bars?
Again, the main difference relating to firearm violence between the US and the rest of the economically developed countries seems to be easy access to, along with lack of registration and regulation of, firearms. Maybe you could start looking into that and how it correlates between increased firearm attacks before blaming the media. Of course, if President Trump really does think that people are susceptible to encouragement to violence from outside sources, maybe you should start censoring the guy who says stuff like this. Nah, he won't ever do that.
We care a lot about the NYSF and LAPD. We care a lot about you people. We care a lot about your guns. We care a lot about the wars we're fighting. See that looks like fun.
Where are we?
Switchblades.
Okay, we'll just splice in from there. It isn't surprising that Trump accepts this, considering the infatuation he got with Switchblades, apparently after watching West Side Story. Being influenced by musicals would also explain why, when selecting top military leaders, he makes sure they have information vegetable, animal, and mineral, know the kings of England and quote the vice historical, from Marathon to Waterloo in order categorical, be very well acquainted with matters mathematical, understand equations about the simple and quadratical, with binomial theory between with a lot of news. With many cheerful facts about the square of the... Oh, terrible. We're not using that.
Aw, why not?